And so where is home? Like, oh, wait. So now I'm going back. You're telling me go back to where you come from. I go back to where I come from, and they say you're not from here, you know? Yeah. And like, what does that do in terms of to the heart, mind, and spirit, you know?
Oh, I'm loving this interview.
I can't tell stories authentically without honoring my own.
What I thought was humility was me playing small.
Guilt and shame have no place in the human experience.
And so to not love myself is so disrespectful.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to a new episode of Human to Human.
Every conversation we've had, I leave like better, you know?
So excited to have you on Human to Human. I've been really looking forward to us having this conversation, especially because this is your home and I'm in London for the first time. Mm-hmm. So I'm really excited to be here.
Look, it's meant to be, you know, aligning and timing, and you know, I'm on it to finally get to do this, and you know, experience, you know, the wonderful experience that you bring to people.
Thank you. And honestly, you know what? Now that you said that, I just have to also thank you because you've called me a few times after interviews have gone out in the past and been like, wow, you really pulled out some things in that person. And that was really like inspiring. And it meant a lot to me because not only are you somebody I admire, but you are like just one of my good friends. So just hearing that you felt affected, that's all I'm really trying to do. And that really meant a lot.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. But honestly, that's all about you and the work that you do. And also I think it speaks to your gifts, your qualities in terms of how you do engage and communicate with people, you know, on the show. And there were ones that I was like, okay, I'm going to, you know, I'm checking it out. I'm going to give it like 5 minutes. Next minute, I'm like, oh, I'm still watching, you know? But then I think also, I really felt like your content really spoke to me during the pandemic. You know what I mean? I think there was and coming out of it, I think there was another level of vulnerability that I saw, you know, that if you think about, or the way I think about social media, you know, sometimes it can be a bit like, I'm not going to put all my stuff out there, you know? My philosophy is like, Instagram's not real, you know, you know what I mean? Yeah. But in some ways, I think what you do, you go the other way and go, look, I can't do this any other way but be real, you know? And I think, you know, the array of people that you've had on and also I think you leading with that vulnerability as well it's been really inspiring. And, you know, there's nothing like seeing your friends winning.
Truly. I appreciate that. You know, what's funny about leading with vulnerability? It took a minute for me to get there. And I think, I mean, in our relationship, I feel like you're a pretty vulnerable person, but do you think you're able to lead with vulnerability on social or in public? Is that a little harder?
I think it is a little bit harder. I mean, I think like being an actor, you know, I pour myself into roles and characters, but there is a bit of a protection, you know, like I'm going into almost like another space, you know what I mean? You know, not to overdo it. Acting is acting, but there is a protection with that. Whereas actually, I find I'm very comfortable in my skin, but like public vulnerability, having to do my documentary about my life, that was very hard. That was very hard. Even when I host the game show that our production company, Trifles Productions, makes, Sorry I Didn't Know on ITV, being a host as myself, it's work. It's work. And, you know, and also I think it challenges the concept of less is more of actors, of like, how much of myself do I want to put out there, you know, because there's always a bit of ourselves in each character. And I feel like me and my friends talk about it's like there's certain type of actors back in the day that it was the mystery, you know what I mean? But now with social media, like there's less and less mystery. Actually, I've got a lot of respect for those people that aren't visible in social media, you know what I mean? And they've kept it. And I think going back to your thing about vulnerability, I can be on one-to-one, but I find it harder within social media. I've got a really interesting relationship with social media. For me, it's like, don't put anything up that I'm not comfortable with and I don't want people to see. And also don't take it too seriously. Right. You know, but also understand the game of it. You know what I mean? There's a version where if I felt like I didn't need to have it, I wouldn't have it. You know, but my business brain and my producer brain, and that I'm in control of who I am and my product. And I'm like, and because I'm alongside being an actor, I'm a producer and I am a supporter of like important things, inclusion, and I like sharing other people's work, whether it's within the entertainment industry or not. So in that way, I found my way of negotiating my relationship with social media. But particularly about being vulnerable, I wouldn't say I find that easy in that space.
Yeah.
And but I think doing Handle with Care, the documentary, it sort of forced me to start doing the work to be able to do it.
Sure.
You know, it's not easy. It's not easy, but it's a day-to-day thing.
No, it is. And I love that you described it in so many different layers, because you as an actor, you as a person who has like interpersonal relationships, you as a producer, those are so many different versions of ourselves. All versions count. All of them are important, right? Once we start trying to make one more important than the other, that can be a part of the internal struggle instead of allowing all of them to exist.
Yeah.
And giving ourselves the nuance of like, all of them can exist and that we are multiple people.
Yeah.
Right?
And also, Stacey, I think things are changing, right?
Yeah.
We've started off this conversation with vulnerability. You know, I didn't know what we're going to be talking about, and I'm enjoying it. But why we're on it, you know, vulnerability, is that I think we're in the season of it, right? If you think of like Busta Rhymes when he got awarded this year, like him, you know, the emotion and that vulnerability and him talking about it. I'm tired of us not being allowed, you know, to be vulnerable. And then I think about the show Bel Air, you know, playing Jeffrey and then having many great scenes with Adrian Holmes, who plays Uncle Phil.
Yes.
And then, like, you know, everyone's included, but specifically between me and him, and I think sometimes Jabari Banks' character, when him playing Will, a lot of the central themes have been about vulnerability.
Yeah.
And it's still rare to see Black men being vulnerable on TV, let alone publicly within our families, within our peer groups, our friendship groups, and in our communities. And there's so much power in vulnerability. I think we're still on the beginning journey of changing the narrative of vulnerability being seen as weak, soft. You know what I mean? It's not masculine. It's like, and actually there's so much power in vulnerability. And I feel like overall, in terms of within society, we're at the beginning part of that journey, if that makes sense.
Yes, yeah. How are your male friendships? Like, are they vulnerable? Are they deep, especially with Black men? Like, are they?
I'm quite lucky. I've got some real deep brothers that challenge me, that support me, that mirror what we're talking about, that they're able to show me that, you know, look, this is who I am, and I'm prepared to be vulnerable in front of you. And sometimes we can hold up our mirrors to people and people can't mirror it. And sometimes I think for me, it's a gradual thing. The more you keep being your authentic self and holding that mirror of who you are, then if someone's having difficulty following you, eventually they'll be able to bring theirs up. And if that's what they want to do, they can fall in line with it. And then some people, they don't want to do it. And I think I've got a great circle of friends, you know, from different backgrounds and ages and places. But a lot of my male friends, we've repeatedly had those moments where there's no space to hide. You know what I mean? It's about being vulnerable in all aspects of life, whether it's relationships, whether it's career, whether it's fears, it's frustrations, it's struggles, and creating that safe space that it's okay and it is safe, and it actually is important as us as men to really have those conversations. Because I don't want to generalize, but I do feel like you know, sometimes a lot of my female friends, like they might naturally do it in some ways, you know what I mean? And been doing it from an early age. Whereas I think men, depending on your upbringing and your circle of people around you, your community, we tend to maybe start a bit later. Or think we've started earlier, but we've not even touched the surface.
Right.
You know? So I feel like vulnerability for me is the new superpower. You know what I mean?
I love that. And I do deeply feel for men when it comes to their relationship with vulnerability. Not every man, definitely wouldn't generalize, but you're saying it in terms of men usually start later because they don't have the permission slip as early as women do. And I think women do have that permission slip. And I've seen how it's affected my life. And I look to my male, either friends or my brothers or my dad. And I'm like, I grew up with a pretty vulnerable dad. So I think I also was like, I always was like, men are amazing being vulnerable. Like, I really enjoy it. But I see that when I ask my friends personally, sometimes they say it's been used against them, or that wasn't accepted or open, or they didn't have that permission slip. So I'm really happy to know that you do have those friendships.
Yeah, I think I was also interested in terms of different generations, you know, like your father, how was his father to him?
Yes.
And then how was his father to him?
Yes.
And then I think some of us also may not have had that, you know?
Yes.
And it might be that our father might not have got that from their father. So how can they pass it on?
Yeah.
You know? And so I always wonder about those things, and I give grace for that in terms of it's hard being a parent. And I think also like being Nigerian, you know, like my father, you know, he's not here anymore, but there was he found it hard I felt, to show like affection and like really like love. Do you know what I mean? Like I remember a hug and a hug would be like, okay. I was like, I'd be like, why are you not gonna hug? And then sometimes my mom would had it, and I speak to some other friends, they're like, yeah, like that level of sort of connection, intimacy, you know what I mean? Like that tactileness is, you know, it's like, oh, come on, just, you know, it's like, well, no, where did you not have it? Did you not?
And they're not comfortable with it.
Yeah, can
like
feel it.
Yes, you can feel it.
Feel it.
Oh.
And it's not just Nigerian, actually. I have a couple of my sort of Caribbean friends as well, and we talk about it. And then we talk about being fathers and wanting to change that. So a couple of my friends that are fathers, they're like, I'm hugging my son every day. Do you know what I mean? And a couple of them, they got a bit bigger, and it's like, get off me, Dad. But it's that thing of like, they know it. It's there. And it's like trying to change that family rhythm.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know? And there's a version where we're in a different world right now. We're a bit more aware, but it does show you, even if you don't get it, you can, you know, you can find the tools to change that dynamic.
Yeah.
And then show your son or your daughter that, you know, it's okay. And actually there's strength in that. Let go, I've got you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I've got you. Even if I haven't got the answers, just letting go and allowing me to hug you, do you know what I mean? Or allowing yourself to actually let go, like, and pour into me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those things are really important. But again, if you've not naturally experienced them and seen them, then it can take work. It can be tricky.
Truly. And you brought up your relationship with your dad. How do you describe that relationship now that I wonder if it's changed from when he was alive to now that he's no longer here, but how do you talk about it, describe it, internalize it?
Yeah, it was very complex, my relationship with my father. I didn't grow up with him. I didn't meet him until I was about, I think, 19. When him and my mum divorced, there was issues about, you know, was there another guy? Am I his son or not? When it got tested, along with my brother, and we were 99.66% full brothers, my dad still didn't accept that. But that was after me and my dad being in each other's lives for like 13 years as father and son. We sort of didn't have the conversation, but we did via action. Cards, son, love you, proud of you, and, you know, Yoruba proverbs and stuff like that. And so it's interesting. Before I met him, my inner child was like, of course he's going to love me. He just needs to meet me, because look at my foster family, how they've loved me, and look at, you know, how everybody embraces me. Why would you not love these brown eyes? And then I think once I did meet him, it was this instant. You know what I mean? There was no, why did you do this? Why did you do that? I think I learned about unconditional love via my foster family. And I was just immediate, like, yo, Dad, I'm your son. Let's go. What's up? Tell me about your stories. And maybe it could be a bit naive, but it was just like, no, we don't even have to talk about that stuff. You know what I mean? I'm here. I'm choosing to be here, and we can make up for lost time. When he, I suppose, abandoned me, rejected me again, you know, it's weird. I did revert back to that young kid going, why doesn't my father want to, you know, sort of be in my life? But another thing happened where once I got over the hurt and the pain, I had to let go. And And I think that's another theme that I've learned over the last 3 or 4 years, you know, pre-pandemic even, the power of letting go, you know. Because some of these things, vulnerability, letting go, is sometimes I think they can be underestimated of how powerful these things are. And so I let go and I got on with my life, and there's still underneath, there's a bit of a sadness there. But I also knew he's a stubborn Niger man, you know what I mean? He's been through a lot, and he's not going to change his mind, you know? He's not going to come back into my life. But deep down, I hoped it would happen. And then unfortunately, during the pandemic, he passed. So we never got to sort of reconnect. But I know I had these strong 13 years where I learned about who he is, which means who I am. You know, I learned about his father and his mother, where we came from, you know, Oregon, and, you know, and like, you know, going to Nigeria and, you know, being in the house that he grew up and seeing Akingbola Street and, you know, being in touch with that side of my family and my identity and that side of my parents, him having that direct access really was important to me. You know, it was 13 years. It's an important part, even though there's a lot of pain and sadness in there. What ages were those? So I did probably, I think, like, let's say 19 to, like, let's say 32, you know, that we were talking, and then we didn't talk, you know, after that, you know. But I suppose where I am with it is love and forgiveness. And I think it's so funny, it's touching on what we just talked about of, what did you get from the father before you? My dad's dad died when my dad was very young. So he became like the eldest, he became the man of the family, and he took care of his sisters, and he loved his mom. But also he didn't have that direct line with his father to show him how to be. And so he learned, which was great, and he did his best. But it was some of that stuff that was still not great, you know, but it still came from love. Some of it maybe was a bit controlling, you know what I mean? Like, do what I say, which comes from being the elders, you know? And so when I look at the sadness and pain in terms of my dynamic with my father, I have love and forgiveness with that, you know? Even to the point of him deciding not to raise me, you know, when him and my mom divorced. I understand that I represent pain of a story that you believe was true, even though it wasn't true. Every time you look at my eyes, you see my mom, you know, in the negative sense. Whereas my other two brothers and my sister, still pain there, but that was from a time where he felt like it was all baked in love, you know? Right. And so, I don't know, as a young guy, I think that's just the way I was naturally thinking about it. And I think I got that from my foster family. And also I'm one, I don't like to hold on to, you know, I don't like when people use the word of hate, you know, I like to sort of not have that in my system.
How did you learn that though?
It's a good question.
Not an easy thing to learn.
Being fostered from the age of 2, by an amazing East London white foster family that could have had more children, that saw me as their son regardless of the color of my skin. And like from a baby, like from the age of 2, like there's something in that, and in a way that they raised me in a way of being their authentic selves. No one's watching them, they're just being, right? That I think I clocked it. Not only how they treated me, but how, like, my mom was like a home help that, you know, helps old people, and like, you know, she would work with nurses, and there was such a, when I looked at her personality, she was so open and such a giver and a carer, you know what I mean? And had the capacity to think about other people and with no judgment as well, you know? And I think just, you know, you just, as a young kid, you're observant, subconscious, you just take it in. And I think when my mum would talk to me about my parents, there was still no judgment. I think we didn't talk much about my dad until later on, but with my mum, it was like, look, your mum's not here because she's not well, you know? And I think that's her version of going, your mum's not here because she doesn't care about you, and right. She's abandoned you. She's not well. And actually, when your mum visits you, there's days where it might be hard and tough, again, she's not well. It doesn't mean it's not going to be hard. So if she wouldn't talk to me in that way, then if I had a hard time with my mom, it'd just be like, my mom's being a normal African mom.
Right.
And there were some days like that. I'm like, why are you combing my hair like that? You know what I mean? It's like, because my wife must been a bit kinder about it. You know what I mean? It's like, just tears coming out, you know. But I learned that it's a bit more nuanced than that.
Of course.
You know? And I learned that my dad just saw a woman that broke his heart and they were arguing and they had to part. He wasn't acknowledging the illness. You know what I'm saying? And I think I did get that from my foster mom. And I remember I said to her, why did you not adopt me? She was like, because she looked at me like, was confused. She's like, Jimmy, your mom's a mother. I'm a mother. If I adopt you, she's got no access to you. I could never do that to another woman. You know what I mean? You know? And of course, like, that sort of stuff stays with you. You know what I mean?
What were you trying to ask her when you said, why didn't you adopt me? Under that.
I think I was questioning whether I was supposed to be temporary or not. You know what I mean? And I think I was testing of like, do you really love me? Do you really want me? Like, you know, like, I think I was doing that as a young kid. And I think the answer was the best answer that I could get. I think it really showed who my mum was. And I think that way of moving and her talk to me, when you're a young kid, you don't have this is, obviously we're talking reflection now, years of reflection, but so you don't have the capacity or the tools to really understand, but it's in you, you know? And then as you start growing and learning, there's lots of different options, but suddenly this option over here feels familiar. Yeah. It might be a different whole scenario, but you know, if my mom was angry, so say she's like, how dare your dad do this? How dare your mom? Then there's a version of that when my dad hurts me through rejection. I'm going to be like, forget that, man. Blah, blah. It's going to have that energy. Doesn't mean it doesn't hurt and I've got a bit of anger, but I've got a different wiring in terms of how I respond to things. So I think that's why I've been able to move with love and forgiveness. Don't get me wrong, still painful, but a love and forgiveness, and you're trying your best. And sometimes the best is not enough, but rather the best than nothing at all. Yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah. And I learned a lot of things from him as well. I got a lot of important things from him that are still helping me today. Yeah. And if I didn't get that, there would have been a space in my life, a gap, which is connected to who I am as a man. Yeah. You know what I mean? There's the identity, but it's also, I call them like those life pillars. You know what I mean? It's like, and I had 4 of them. I had 2 dads and 2 moms, you know what I mean? And so losing 3 of them in the space of, you know, a year and a bit, suddenly that does test your foundations. You know what I mean? Suddenly,
your mother,
my biological mom, biological dad, my biological brother, and then my foster father before that, 4 in the space of just over a year and a bit. And you just go, that rocks your foundations. And actually, circling back to vulnerability, you've got no choice to be vulnerable. You can try and, you know, and I ain't going there, but when you lose those people around you that actually, as I said earlier, have made me the man I am today, that's hard. You know what I mean? And therapy, right? Just in terms of, I started it, I think, probably the year before the pandemic, you know.
Just because?
I think I started because my brother was diagnosed with cancer, or Shegan, the one that passed away. And I think I'd also come out of a relationship as well. And it was weird. It was like my normal way of sort of, I quit coping and coping just wasn't happening. You know, I was like, and even the way that I would have coped when I had the issue when my dad rejected, like I had these little codes that would normally get me through things. This wasn't working. And I'd always been like, when people asking if I'd done therapy, I'm like, I used to feel like there was a bit of judgment, you know, if they did know some of my backstory. Because I think society says anyone that's been through something like that has to. And I'm like, I don't like being told I have to be there. Yes. I spend my life proving, whether it's the stats or what people think. I like to go, yeah, that's factual, but it doesn't have to just be that. It can also be over here.
Yeah.
And I think that I've always had that in me from a young kid for some reason. I don't know why. I think maybe it's because I've been aware that from a young kid, I'm very blessed and fortunate, and it could have gone another way. And it's like, as I got older, I'm like, well, let's just keep going this way. You know what I mean?
Right. This is positive. This is working.
Positive.
Yeah.
Like, let's just keep walking.
Yeah.
Let's just see how far you can go. But yeah, so therapy, I was just saying that it came before the pandemic, and yeah, it's been really helpful. And part of me, I was talking to a friend today who was studying to be a counselor. And I was like, it's so interesting that even more so now where we are in the world, that it's not part of the curriculum in schools across the world.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I'm just thinking on the basic level of like the different versions of bullying. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
When we think about social media and your mental health and just like processing pressures. Do you know what I mean? How young people, like, I think they're much more that next
growing
generation.
Up with things that we didn't even touch or see.
Yeah. And also I feel like the acceleration point from being a young kid to actually moving and thinking a certain way, where it's like, okay, you're still in your mid-early teens, but the way you're moving and thinking, it's faster than we ever did.
Yes,
do you know what I mean? And just the support in that, and then the other end of, you know, not everybody needs it, but just human beings, we can go through things in life and not even be aware of that little knot or that slight kink that you can live your best life and be fine, but actually, what if that kink's gone? How much finer can you be? Do you know what I mean? How much better can you be? And so that's the way that I look at it. There's a sense of like a healthy MOT, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Healthy, you know, mental, spiritual, emotional checkups. You know what I mean?
I see therapy as a really beautiful way to get back to your authentic self, because if you have a healthy therapist, they're not telling you what to do. They're showing you who you are, what you need to confront, and how to move through that, right?
Yeah.
And I recognize that as we all get older and we grow up and we're looking to be loved and liked, we abandon parts of ourselves, trying to figure out who we are, and we're leaving some of that authenticity, you know, by the wayside, and we abandon parts of ourselves. And I wonder for you, did you recognize some of the things you abandoned about yourself to be loved and to be liked? And have you been able to pick any of that back up?
You know what? I'm not sure if it was the stuff that I've abandoned. I think I realized a lot of the things that I used to do, why I used to do them, you know? And how some of those things have bled into where I am right now, you know? I think being an actor, you know, there's the basic thing of like wanting to be loved. Everybody look at me, right? But also I think in terms of the world that I grew up in, and the many different sort of groups, you know, I was a young kid that learned to blend, you know what I mean? Blend into certain, like the cool kids and not so cool kids, you know, my Bayesian friends and their family, Jamaican friends, Ghanaian, Nigerian, you know what I mean? White working class, my Nigerian family, my white foster family, like there's a way of, I found of like blending, but still being my authentic self to a certain extent, I think, you know? But then I just go, well, that's interesting, because then if you expand that further, you think about character work, you know, you're just like, oh, okay. Yeah. And a sense of that, I was quite a shy kid. So I'd be like, they were like, what? And then like 2 hours later, an hour later, I'd be on stage just doing the madness. Right. You know what I mean? But because I'm not being me.
Right.
And then there was a release in that of like, wow, this feels great. But I can feel it through my body, but I'm not being me. You know, just call me a different name, and might not even need to put on a different outfit. You know what I mean? It could be a minimal thing like a pair of glasses. And I'm like, that's interesting, because during those times between 7 to 15, I was never thinking about being an actor.
Yeah.
But I just enjoyed losing myself and making people laugh and seeing the impact it had. And that's all down to, I think, of this young Black kid in the UK just growing up in this world that had a lot of different moving parts and people in it. You know what I mean? So I think that's one aspect of it. But then also I think there's how protective I've always been of my mothers as well. If I was going to fight, someone would be cuss your mom, like, you know, it'd be like, boop. You know, even if it was a friend, there's just like, I would see red mist. And then that was connected to, how protective I was of my biological mom, definitely because of her illness, but also because of how close I was to both my mothers, you know, not dismissing my foster father, but like, I was definitely, you know, a mother's boy, you know? And again, not the negative, the weak. Like, when I look back, I saw strength. My foster mom left her first husband with 2 boys because he was, you know, he was an idiot, a little bit abusive, and then met my foster father. And there's a strength in that to, I'm going to walk away, I don't need to be in this. And there's a strength in that to be, I'm still going to be open and maybe meet someone, I can fall in love again. You know what I'm saying? And then my biological mom, in terms of coming from Nigeria, you know what I mean, with 3 kids, you know, losing one, you know, trying to find a job in the UK where they say the streets are paved with gold, but actually when you look like us, you're being treated terribly, you know, and like navigating that. And then in a marriage that's slowly dwindling away, and then to be alone in a foreign country with a 1-year-old baby, and then you're trying to do the best you can for, like, there's all strength in that. There's another way I can look at it and not see that, but I can't. I see the strength in that. And the way that my mum battled with mental illness throughout their lives. And like, she was a strong woman and she kept going. She, don't want to get into too much of that, but she'd been through a lot. And I'm like, you're still there. You're still there, you know? And they're the bits where I'm like, yeah, that resilience. I say again, they're not words that have been said. I'm just seeing it through action, through real life stuff. And I think subconsciously, when stuff happens for you, if you're that type of person, you just like, you tap into that. You know? And then when someone asks you, I'm like, well, where did I get that from? I'm like, actually, that, and that. You know what I mean?
I see this like nature versus nurture thing specifically. You know, identity is always built in that nature versus nurture. And you have this incredibly dynamic foundation of multiple, you know, nationalities. And then you have this Nigerian background, but then raised by British family. And then in this, you know, this, and I'm seeing like, where do you see sense of self? Like, is it just a grabbing of all the things, obviously, but how and what parts were you grabbing? And what parts did you battle with the most?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I was call myself like a British born Nigerian or British Nigerian, you know? I would phrase that because to be British, you're naturally, there's so many different elements that you take on by just being raised here, regardless if you're Nigerian, Philippines, you know, Filipino, should I say. And yet I can tell the difference with being like my Nigerian friends as a kid, that those that were born in Nigeria that came to the UK when they were young, to the difference between those that were born here. And yet, as I got older, I was like, this is not about division. We are all one, but the diaspora, we're all different. You know what I mean? So even if you want to break it down to like music, Afrobeat, the one is made back home to the one is like, it's slightly different, but it's still within the same, you know what I mean? The blood in my body. We're all
trying to say something. We're all trying to say the same thing.
Where's it coming from?
Where's
it coming from? You know? And the blood in my body is coming from, you know what I mean? It's, and so I say that because I think I wrestled with that probably the first sort of 6-7 years, you know, in terms of who am I, my identity. And I think I had one period I changed my name for a couple of years and whatnot. But again,
how old are you?
I think it was between, 10 and 11. You know what I mean? It's about a year and a half or so. Yeah, and I think it was about wanting to connect with my foster family as much as possible. But also I think it was during 7 to 11, I think I was struggling with understanding my situation. I think the older I got and the more intelligent I got, an awareness of the dynamics of being fostered and why I'm not around my siblings and my dad, I think I basically didn't have the emotional tools to cope with it. And so I was just sort of wilding out in all different ways. And then I think the name stuff was a bit like, how can I feel even more connected to this family that have taken me in? But then it was also, I think I remember around that time where in the UK, there was a big thing about like, it was really hard to be African, you know? And so there was a lot of Africans pretending to be Jamaicans or from the Caribbean. And I remember when the slow shift started to happen where people were back to being proud about, you know, where they're from, where we were from originally. And, you know, you had it in the music, you know, and I remember just sort of switching it back quite quickly, you know, and then I never looked back. It was that thing of like, you know, Akingbola is such a strong, powerful name, and it made me go like, don't let go of that, you know, and I think that was a sense of really, really embracing my identity. You know what I mean? And from a place of really understanding as well. And then I think it just built from that. You know, I don't speak Yoruba, and like there are those times that would test me. I'm like, oh man, 5, 10.
Ooh, was it like older people or
like aunties, uncles? You know, you go to the shop and they start, and then they just judge you, and I'm like, auntie, you don't know my story, please. Yeah. They're like, how can you not speak it? And you can't hear. I was like, the small,
right,
you know what I mean?
Right.
But then I would meet people that grow up in a healthy, two parents, you know, full Niger family. And they're like me. I was like, how do you not know they're like, Jimmy, don't do what you don't like. But I was like, no, I'm just confused. And they'd be like, well, some cases would be their parents didn't want to bombard them and make it difficult for them in terms of giving them too many languages. And I'm like, meanwhile, my Indian, Pakistani, Filipino, you know, Portuguese, Somali friend, they're bilingual.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? And so, but then that made me go, look, that wrestle with identity, that we're all different. But look at that, we have different upbringings, and it's that thing, you're fine, you are enough.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You are, you know, we're not monoliths, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like we are all different, but we are coming from the same place. And look at that, from 2 different upbringings, but 2 young boys in the UK don't speak their mother tongue, you know? And does that mean you're not Nigerian? Of course it doesn't, you know?
I wrestle with that. First of all, I deeply, deeply relate to that. And I wrestled with that a lot when I was coming to terms with like, you're binational and accepting and loving that, because so many times I'm Igbo, and amount of times, and I'm the oldest. And so the Ada doesn't speak the language. I understand it, but couldn't speak it back. Always felt this like deep shame about that, trying to figure that out. But asked my parents, and it was that similar. And now my dad makes a joke about how like Igbo people, you know, they speak English to their kids, even in Nigeria. And he's like, I don't know why we're doing that. Like you know, he sees it now as a misstep. He's like, I wish we did that to you guys. And we were trying to, you know, get to know the country and understand. And that was in America. So to hear you have such a similar story across the pond. Yeah. And then to have, like you said, like my Indian friends, my Hispanic friends, they all were bilingual. And I was like, is this something that as Black people all over the world that we struggle with trying to figure out how to be accepted? Because as you mentioned, there was a time that it was hard to be African here. I assume the hard was based on racism. Yeah, on both sides. Yeah, all over. And I'm like, within the Black community as well as, you know, in my documentary, my brother Shola, he's the eldest, and he talked about like racist white boys, you know, saying things to him. But we didn't capture this bit in the documentary. But when I spoke to him, he goes, between them and then also having to
fight and like stand up for himself at school to the other kids that happened to be from the Caribbean, Jamaica and whatnot. It was equal. You know what I mean? So it was almost like he was a moving target, you know? And I just worked with another British Nigerian guy, big guy, actor, and he's the same. He's like, Jimmy, I was a moving target. So and he came from Nigeria. You know what I mean? So it was just like, I wasn't cool enough to be with the Jamaican kids, and then the British ones that were born here, I was almost a bit too African for that. And, you know, then you get into racism for the white ones. So it was just like, I felt like I didn't fit in, you know? And I think that's a real interesting concept, isn't it? I think, you know, the journey of identity, and I've heard stories about people going back home and then going, well, I'm saying going back home, but they're calling me English. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so where is home? Like, wait, so now I'm going back. You're telling me go back to where you come from. I go back to where I come from, and they say you're not from here, you know? Yeah. And like, what does that do in terms of to the heart, mind, and spirit, you know?
Have you gone back to Nigeria?
I've been once, you know. I'm well overdue to go back again. I felt like a connection. I was like, oh yeah, I know this. And I didn't have anything to say, oh, you're not from here. But I could sense that it's like an energy, you know what I mean? I could sense that no matter if I was dressed in traditional, you know what I mean? And if there was a lineup, there was something about my energy. It's like, he's not from here. You know what I mean? And it wasn't a negative, but I could sense that other people could sense that at times. Yeah. But the main thing, it didn't feel alien. You know, it didn't feel like, what is this? I felt comfortable to the point that my auntie's like, no, you're not going out on your own. Where's the driver? And I'm like, I want to get in it. I want to, you know, and at the same time, I feel like I need to go and visit more. It's interesting. Work hasn't taken me there. There might be a possibility of me going in November with my documentary, Handle with Care. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed. But yeah, when I'm there, it made me think about my mom and dad's journeys. You know what I mean? In terms of where they came from to where we are now, and how as siblings we've benefited.
Yeah. Where do you find your home or your sense of belonging now?
That's interesting. I think now that I live in the States, I think I realize that home can be wherever I want to set my heart and my mind, you know? I can, you know, I say I'm going back home. And yeah, I can say to you, you're in my hometown. I'm going to be back. Let's catch up, you know? And so I think, again, I've let go that it has to be one place. You know, I'm open to the nuance, and that I'm in both places. I got a place here and I got a place there, and that's okay. And who knows, like, yeah, could I call, I don't know if I know the answer to that. Could I call like Nigeria home, you know, to go I'm not sure if I could do that. But there's a bit of me goes, if I want to, I can do that. It's for me, you know, what other people think, it's up to them. But in some ways, there's a triangle, right? Lagos, LA, London, you know, and for me it goes, I think I'm in the middle of that triangle. You know?
I love that.
You know? Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And like life is like right in the middle, and you're like just moving through life. I love that. Yeah.
And it's all connected. Yeah. You know, it's all connected. My brother was telling me the other day that our dad's mom was like a performer. I can't remember what the Yoruba term is, but like she used to perform to all the different tribes up and down the country. And I think it wasn't the done thing for the woman to be like, do the performances, you know what I mean? Like the dancing and whatnot. And we were just talking, we were like, look how interesting that is. Like, because my father, his name was Aki, he wasn't really a creative. He wasn't really, you know, he liked to try and play the guitar every now and then, but he kicked out my brother, Shola, the eldest, for he spent money for college on drums. And then my brother Shola went on to be one of the best percussionists in the world, and with Jamiroquai, you know, but still my father would be like, yeah, but you didn't go to university. You know what I mean? It's like, no matter how high he would get, my dad would still be like, but where's the certificate? You know what I mean? And yet, here I am. I see my brother doing that. I'm like, well, I don't do the music thing, but I'm into this acting thing, and I'm doing what I'm doing. And then my brother's daughters, one's an actor as well, and one's a singer. And then, you know, we all have it in us. Yeah. And actually, I do think about my dad's mom. It's so crazy that my dad was so against it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think some of that is tradition, culture of fear as well, you know? Part of me would have liked to have asked, was there something in you that you want to do like this, you know? Yes. Because you were always interested in it, even though you would sort of not fully celebrate it. Yeah. But I think I mentioned that just in terms of, we talk about where we're from and our roots. And it's like, and I think actually the creative root is coming from my dad's line, you know? And yeah, I'm really proud of all my family members that that you followed that. We're all following it in our different ways, you know? And we've also had moments and times that we've come together, you know? So the composer for my documentary was my brother Shola. The composer for my niece's documentary was her dad. You know what I mean? It's like, I love that. And I think that's that thing of like changing the family dynamic and rhythm and like, you know, bringing all the different family members together and who our gifts and our talents.
Yeah. What's the last thing you forgave yourself for the first time?
I think I forgave myself for doubt and fear. You know, I think there's an element where I wouldn't normally associate that with me, but the majority hasn't been that. But there's been a bit where it has been dominant in my life in different areas, and I think the moment I forgave myself, I was able to let go of it. You know, again, and that I think some of my core themes over the last few years have been vulnerability and letting go and the power of that. You know, but yeah, I had to forgive myself. You know, because sometimes we're like, oh man, what am I doing? You know what I mean? You know, it can be relationships, it can be careers, it can be just life stuff. Like, why am I doing that? And then there's the thing of like, look, you did it. These are maybe some of the reasons why. Yeah. Like let go, let go, and actually use that frustration, that angst, and pour it into not doing it anymore and letting go of it and starting that next chapter. Yeah. So I think I gave myself for that, and also like I think a lot of people, artists, we wrestle with perfectionism.
Yes.
You know, so I think I definitely forgave myself for not being perfect. Yeah. I forgave myself for actually. I can even reframe that, you know, and say, look, I'm a decent good guy, but I'm also flawed, and it's okay. You know,
it's okay,
and it's okay. And I think sometimes it's hard to forgive yourself for your flaws. You know, and I think especially we're in a time where we're talking more. We're being like, even your amazing show the more you talk about things, it's great, but sometimes it can, depending on how you handle it, it can take you back, you know. There's a bit of sense of regression sometimes, you know. And it's like, it's important to keep an eye on that. Like, let's do all the bits and talk about the bits and do the therapy, but let's try and make sure that there's a forward momentum.
Yes.
You know, that
we're having a healthy relationship with it.
Yeah. Because if it's not balanced and healthy, then it's doing the opposite to what you're hoping or you want it to do. Yeah. But can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
What was the last thing that you forgave yourself for?
I forgave myself for my lack of self-trust, or for just not trusting that I know the right answer. I think something I'm working through as we speak is sometimes I'll experience something and I'll be like, no, I don't want it. Or, yep, that's it. And when it's so fast, I'll question it. Even though I've trained myself to be like yes or no. But I'm still a little not confident in that ability. And I'll call somebody to validate it. And I don't love that. I don't love it. And depending on who I'm calling, I can say, I hate that I'm calling you because I low-key don't really need your advice, but can you help me? And I go to like a best friend or a mom or a sister because they know how to handle like she really doesn't need me. She really just needs a listening ear.
Yeah, yeah.
And sometimes I don't really love that I still need that. I struggle with the fact that like, Stace, you know the answer, but you're just like, you don't want to admit you know the answer. You work so hard to learn how to figure out the answer. And I'm working on trusting that part of my gut wholeheartedly because it's linked to my fear of making mistakes.
Yeah.
You know, and so I'm in the process. I have forgiven myself for it, but I also notice I'm in the process of constantly forgiving myself for it, re-forgiving myself for it, because it happens and I'll be like, didn't you just deal with this yet? Like, 2 days ago, and didn't you learn to trust? Didn't God already give you a scenario to show you to trust yourself? And then you're like, great, I got it. And then 3 days later, it happens again. So it's that. It's that. Just developing a beautiful bond with my self-trust. I'm still on that journey.
I love that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Like, I can hear a version of how sometimes you would talk to yourself, how we talk to ourselves. And it's like, and yet we would never talk to our close loved ones like that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's just like, what is that?
Even when you said forgiving yourself for not being perfect, I'm like, Jimmy, but you're like one of my favorite people.
Thank you.
How could, you know what I'm saying? But I
have that. And then there's no such thing as being perfect. That's why it's like, let me reframe it.
Yeah.
For the flaws, for the things that I don't find easy, and and then owning those things and working at them and being a bit frustrated because you're still coming up short in some areas, But again, it's just like, it's okay to, give yourself some grace and do what you can do. And
how comfortable are you with giving yourself grace?
I'm getting much better.
Okay.
Before I was terrible at it. I've become much more comfortable with giving myself grace. I think I would go to the extreme and just, emotionally beat myself up in some ways, and just like, and then miss the nuance of, no, actually, you're good at this. You did this. There's a lot of good pluses here, but sometimes it's like all I can see is the negatives. You know what I mean? Or the things that didn't work, or the things that I didn't do as well as I could have. And it's like, no, actually, let's try and look at it in a balanced way. And then I think that's helped me just in life, is actually with conflicts, with decisions. It's like, all right, let's look at all the bits. And let me put myself in their shoes. And because to be sort of a bit, I don't know, one-dimensional, that can be dangerous. It can be for yourself and for...
I find ambitious people struggle with this a lot. And, that's why I'm always interested, like, you're so successful, you're doing so well in your life and in your career. And I always think, like, in order to do well in career, does that come with a bit of, you better do better, like, does that come with all of that? Is that I know it's not the only way to do it. I'm saying, is that how we think to do it? And then we get there and we're like, we should be nicer to ourselves. It's like, it's like, what is that trick?
Yeah. I think it can be multiple things. I think I have elements of you. I'm very, very competitive with myself. Yeah. So that's my version. You got to do better. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's almost like, you did that, but you know you can't rest there. You got to go again. You know what I mean? And I think so. I do push myself. And yeah, I think it's something that's stayed with me from when I first started doing it, And then I think we said about it earlier, it's like, keep walking down that street, and if it keeps opening up, then who knows where it could go. But you can't just walk down it. You've still got to do the work, And so as a creative, I've definitely had that. Like, to leave the UK and leave everything that I had built and to start from scratch in the US. I didn't get flown over to be, the next regular in, I don't know, Empire, or, do you know what I mean, NCIS or anything. I just came with a backpack, suitcases and a green card. And I had to be humble about no one knows anything that I've done really in the UK on stage or TV and film. But also I was excited about it. I was like, all right, come on, let's go. Like, I'm on the bottom floor. But I've got a life experience of doing some great stuff. So let's see where that's going to get me on this journey in America. And also, let's see, and then this is all to myself, let's see if I can compete. You know, and if worst case scenario, I'm going back home with my suitcases, pretending on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, I'm still there. And I'm like, yo, anybody got a job for me? That's the worst case scenario. Right. But actually, deep down, that's never going to happen because that competitive edge of like, do the work. You know what I mean? Like, let's do the work to even be in a position to apply for a green card. And then I think the next step is to, yes, keep looking about where we're going next, but make sure you're taking moments to go look how far you've come.
Yes.
And then that fuels that thing of like, let's keep going.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
What's your relationship with rejection like? You had a very complex relationship with it as a younger child.
Yeah.
And then you went into a career that you have to build a relationship with rejection.
No, it's crazy.
It's crazy. Wow, yeah.
Oh, rejection. You know what? Through the work, it didn't hit that sensitive space, I think, of what you're alluring to when it comes to work. It's still not easy to get the amount of rejection you get in the acting business. I think I read a real good book recently. It's Oprah Winfrey. It's called What Happened to You. And there's a great chapter about how a slight bit of trauma or to overcome something, how it gives you strength, like it gives you some sense of resilience, right? An understanding of a resilience. And that if you have it in a early age, that it can do you really well in your future life. But if you have a easy time and that moment when you have to go through something is a bit later, it can be a bit more difficult to handle it and respond to it.
Yeah.
And I think with the acting, it didn't hit that personal space. But I think within my life experience, you know, there was always a strong sense of resilience. So I would get a no and be flat on my back with disappointment, but I'm going to go again. I'm going to go again, you know? And I think it's very easy to say that, but when it really happens, you have to, it's not just getting up and going again. What does that look like?
Yeah.
It's reading, doing the work, studying harder. Yeah. It's like really thinking about how you can be a better artist. Yeah. But then when it comes to the personal rejection, like relationships and stuff, that's harder. That's much harder. That's much harder. I can't even lie and be like, yeah, it's the same. It's like, no, that's tricky. And I think some ways in my past, there might be times where I'm like, well, let me just be half in so it don't, you know what I mean?
Hurt like, as much.
Don't hurt as much, you know what I mean? You know? And that's a whole nother thing, right? I mean, and I think we were talking earlier in the break, you know, about leaning in, you know?
Yes.
And that's something that I'm definitely doing now. It's like, yo, let's lean in so we're fully in something. Yeah. So whether it works or it doesn't work, we know why.
We know.
Right? When you're half, you're like, you could tell your friends, this is what happened. It's like, that's not the facts, Stacy. That's not the facts, because you're only half in, so you don't have the full experience to collect the data and be like, well, this is why I'm here, you know? But I get it. That's about fear.
God. So what fear did you confront to lean in?
The loss of my brother. My brother, Olusegun, you know, Christmas Day, he passed away. He was in his bed and we knew it was going a certain way. And he was looking at me and my brother, Shola, and like lots of things were going on for each of us in this moment. Obviously, my brother in the bed, he should be the main, you know, discussion right now. But he could see that me and my brother were wrestling with what's happening to him, but our own personal stuff. And he said something to us like, look, right now where I am, all the fears, the doubts, the worries I've ever had, I'm telling you, bro, that doesn't mean anything right now. Doesn't mean anything. Whatever you're afraid of, just lean into it and do it. Because when you're in this position, you'll be thinking about that stuff and it will haunt you, you know? So you got nothing to fear. if you're going to fear something, I took it this way. It's where he was at. So stop being worried about having that awkward conversation with a friend or giving your heart to something that you actually want for your life, you know? And then to have that and then a pandemic, you have a lot of time, you know, I had a lot of time to sit with that, reflect on that. Really, you know? If that was a halfway point for our lives in this world, you know, it's like, yeah, I want to lean in. I want to, and I'm holding the mirror going, yeah, I'm not really. I've leant in over this way, and it's probably why, you know, I'm doing all the things I'm doing creatively. But in terms of, we're going back to vulnerability and fears and leaning into that, you know, it takes work, but it's definitely the way I'm going to be living my life now for the rest of my life.
That was such a gift that he gave you.
I know, and at a time where he's, you know what I mean?
Such a gift.
Battling for his life. But it was, and it's a term I use a lot. I use it, lean in, you know, just lean into it. Like, we're grown, let's lean into these things. Because actually, when you do lean into them, they're not as bad as the thought that might be in your mind, you know? So yeah, lean in, and then the rewards of leaning in as well. I think sometimes it's hard to even think about that side of it. It's always like, well, what if it hurts? What if it doesn't go? It's like, but what if it's amazing? What if it's everything you ever wanted? Or what if it's just an amazing experience before it fizzles out? Rather that than half in or a quarter in. You know what I mean?
Seriously.
You know?
Wow.
Which is about protecting your heart and not wanting to get
So
hurt.
what are you leaning into right now?
What am I leaning into? I think I'm leaning into, you know, like, you have the pie charts, right? You know, sort of like, and it's like, if I said this bit represents my personal stuff, and then the rest is my creativity and my work. I'm leaning into addressing that balance so it's 50-50. And so I'm leaning into changing that percentage. And that includes leaning into fears, love. It's leaning into failure. It's leaning into vulnerability, you know, honesty with myself. And I think all those things are linked. And the honesty for myself is like, what do I want for myself in this life, you know?
I hope we can continue to keep each other and hold each other in that space, because I'm also leaning into that as well. And you and I have had a couple conversations about it, because like the only way we get the 60-40 is by doing it. It's not like it doesn't just happen. No. Finding that out is hilarious.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, okay, that's actually me too.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm saying that to say I not only deeply hear you, but want to be alongside you, to hold you and to have you hold me, because it is really hard to lean into that part of us. Like I feel like we're vulnerable people, and I have gotten to experience you as a great friend. And so I know, like, no, Jimmy's probably blah, 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 and open in this, and you probably think the same thing about me. But when I'm dating, I see when those fears come up, and I see when, oh, this is the next level of vulnerability, or this is the hard conversation you know, might not have thought you were ready to have, or now need to find out how ready you are, or whatever it is. Love is just such a powerful thing, and I want that for us. So when I asked, are you leaning in, and you leaned in with that answer, I just wanted to meet you there, because I understand.
I appreciate that.
And it kind of leads me to my last question, which is giving a permission slip to those who do balance multiple identities, and how to love and own those multiple identities. How would you give a permission slip to those who are in that space?
I feel like if you don't own those multiple identities, then you're denying the different parts of yourself. So if I elaborate, like, I have to own my foster family. You know what I mean? They're a large part of me, as well as my biological Nigerian family. You know, I own it and I bring it together, you know? So there's nothing for me to dismiss. You know, they made me who I am today. You know, there's such a complexity to me that I've embraced, and actually it's my difference. It's part of my superpower. I know I used that word before, but it's like, this is great. You know, I'm a mishmash, you know what I mean? To the point where whether it's different cultures, it's different foods, it's different music, it's different ideologies, you know, and I just go, yeah, I celebrate that. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's not about keeping them apart.
Yeah.
It's about the connectedness of that, you know? Mm-hmm. And I think I had to do that with me because otherwise I would feel guilty if it was just all one way about trying to be with my biological family. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Then I'm going, but this family showed me unconditional love, my foster family. And that alone has changed this young Black boy's life. So what, I'm going to dismiss that? And because of my true desire to be with my biological family? No. You know, I'm going to embrace that and that, you know? And in the other way of reframing it, I'm not going to dismiss my biological family through the lens of, you didn't care about me, Dad. And Mom, I know you were sick, but you did abandon me. You know what I'm saying? It's like, no, I'm choosing to be like, let's bring it all, even the messiness, because it all together has made me the man I am today. And I'm blessed for it, you know? And I thank them, and I thank my community outside of my family. Yeah. You know, they're like my Nigerian friends, like, you know, Jamaican friends, you know, my Irish friends, like my friendship groups. I realized in my upbringing, I saw so much and lived so much with them, being in their households and conversations. And there's a form of life education I got through them that actually represents what I'm about in terms of inclusivity of life, not just in terms of the art, but just in life, you know? Yeah. You know, I can eat some, you know, egusi with you, some fish and chips with you, some pie mash with you, some ackee and side fish with you, do you know what I mean? You know, some Scottish fried Mars bar, maybe, I don't know. And I love that, you know, it's the mishmash of all the beautiful qualities that I've had, all the beautiful people and their qualities and the impact that they've had on my life. Yeah. You know, this guy sitting in front of you now has benefited from that. And I will continue to do so with a big dose of leaning in.
Yeah. Oh, what a gorgeous way to end this conversation. This was not only so enlightening, this is also why we connected the first time we met. Yeah. We sat down together at a dinner and acted like no one else was there on accident, totally connected.
We did.
And just went there. And I so appreciate you for just staying open and continuing to develop this friendship with me, but also getting to experience you outside of it, just hearing more of your story, how you experience your story, watching you live your life, be so successful, but also like constantly aware of the other parts that you want to just grow in your world and in your life. I'm so proud. I'm so proud.
Thank you. And likewise though, like I know we just learn to receive when people bless us with such kind words. But likewise, I think even this show, you know, what you've been doing, how you've been really impacting many lives, you know what I mean, across the globe. And that's not easy. You know what I mean? That's not easy. That takes work. That takes some sacrifices. And I want to thank you, because also I think part of what you're doing is also part of the movement of shifting the way that we think and move and the way that we have conversation. And what's great that the first time we met, this is representative of it. You know what I mean? And here we are. So thank you.
You're so welcome.
Thank you so much. We did it at last.
Thank you guys for watching. Obviously, you can see there's so much to share with your friends, and I hope you got the permission slip that he gave, because like I said, it was such a gift that your brother gave that to you. And I really felt that, and I hope you guys felt that as well. Thanks so much for watching this episode, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks for watching this episode of Human to Human. If you like this episode, make sure you like, subscribe, leave a comment, share with a friend, and check out our playlist for new episodes from the show. Also, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at OneTakeStace, and you can follow the show at Human to Human with Stacy Ike. And remember, curiosity is the pathway to consciousness, so let's take the next step together.